I'm in the mood for success. Emotional intelligence for greater accomplishment in life and speaking. Robert Christian Minson.
All right, let's have a nice round of applause for that wonderful introduction. And also a round of applause for the navigational intelligence it took to get to this room. All right, so who's in the mood for success? Yeah! All right, that's what I get. This is about emotional intelligence, so I need a lot of love from all of you guys. All right, so consider this. Consider what success means in this scenario. All right, you've got an overnight layover in Barcelona, Spain. So you've got it all planned out. You're going to see the town by night. Your flight arrives by 8 p.m. You rent a car and you get on the road by 9 p.m. You get to your Airbnb location by about 10. You go in quickly to meet the host and get some tips on what the hottest night spots are. And then before you hit the town, you go back to the car to take the luggage up, only to find that the tires have been slashed, the window has been smashed, and all your luggage has been stolen. True story. Happened to yours truly here. Yeah. You don't know. I didn't know anybody. Didn't speak the language. You know, even the police were suspiciously non-cooperative. And to boot, now it's like past 12 a.m. It starts to rain. The distance between the car and the police station is about a mile, which I have to traverse a couple of times. And you know, it took me till 4 a.m. to basically get the police to cooperate and get the police report. So what would you do in this situation? Crawl up in a little ball on the sidewalk and cry, hoping to die? Would you get filled with rage and yell and scream at every passerby who can't understand your English anyway? Or would you take a deep breath, assess the situation, say, all right, I'm in for an unusual adventure, and maybe I might even learn something here. So fortunately for me, now I considered every one of those options, let me tell you, but fortunately for me, with my training in emotional intelligence and the work that I do, I took the high road, and that helped me keep my chin up, enjoy the rain, actually get to see some of the city in the narrow corridor that I traversed back and forth. I got that police report, which actually helped me to get my insurance to reimburse me without a hitch, without which would have been a complete nightmare. And I even got a kiss from a passing lady in the night. But that's another story, which doesn't require a lot of emotional intelligence. All right, so today we're really going to see how your relationship with your emotions can have a big impact on your experience of success in your life. We're going to look at ways that we can help develop that emotional intelligence. So first, let's define what we mean by emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, commonly referred to as EI or EQ, kind of like IQ for intelligence quotient, is basically the ability to recognize, to feel, and to manage your feelings, as well as to understand the feelings of others. At a very basic level, emotional intelligence allows us to manage our relationships without them going too far awry. All right? It helps us manage by being mindful that behavior begets behavior. In other words, if you storm into the room with a tsunami of rage, you're going to get a backlash of anger at you. But if you walk in as a gentle river of peace, that peace is going to get reflected back at you in kind. So the real world is a place where both feelings and our instincts have an important impact on our behavior. So it doesn't stand to reason, wouldn't it be great if we could learn something more about that and actually use that information to our advantage? So that's what we're going to do here today. What happens if we don't develop our emotional intelligence? perhaps you find yourself in a job that you've been at very, very many years. You've got a lot of tenure, a lot of experience. You've got a high IQ, and yet somehow you keep getting passed over again and again for those promotions. Maybe you find yourself perpetually starting new relationships that start out great and get to a certain point, but then they plateau, and it seems impossible to sustain them, and eventually they dissolve over and over again. Perhaps as a speaker, you develop your craft, you learn to speak clearly, get that vocal variety in, the body language, your message is down pat, and yet you continue to lack this critical connection with your audience. So maybe you've tried strategies to deal with your emotions, like not dealing with them at all, just thinking your way through, or drinking your way through, or any other emotionally numbing process. Perhaps you have found yourself, perhaps maybe you decide to express your emotions, let them just be free, only to find that they're like a herd of wild horses that trample over everything, leaving a wake of destruction that then you have to clean up. Or maybe you take the stoic approach and you get rid of your emotions altogether, relying on logic and intellect, only to find at the end of the day you feel alone and disconnected. So if you tried any of these strategies and they don't seem to be working for you, you're in the right place. There is an alternative. But first, let's give you some facts and figures. All right, research in 2002 on IQ, or intelligence quotient, showed that intelligence is only responsible for 25% of our chances for success in later life. And actually, a study that happened in 1994, a bit earlier but a bit more extensive, puts that number closer to 5%. So there's a factor for our success, somewhere between 75 and 95%, that intelligence does not account for. The international search firm Egon Zehnder International analyzed 515 executives and found that those with the strongest emotional intelligence were more likely to succeed over those with both strong IQ and relevant previous experience. Both those things that we intuitively believe are what are the most important factors for success, no? And then research by the Center for Creative Leadership in the United States found that 3 main reasons for failure are: 1, difficulty in handling change, inability to work well in a team, and poor interpersonal relations. All of these involve deficiencies in emotional competence. So if you are still unconvinced of the value of emotional intelligence, consider these specific benefits. The ability to overcome difficult situations. The ability to express yourself clearly but warmly. The ability to build better relationships. To keep your emotions under control when that rage starts to boil. To become resilient in difficult times. And who doesn't believe we're not living in difficult times right now, right? The ability to value others and attain commitment from others. All right, so who's in a Toastmasters leadership position right now, or has ever been? How valuable is it to have extra oomph to obtaining commitment? You know, who needs to attain commitment from others? That's the name of the game, basically. And finally, to increase your own well-being, to just feel better. So again, we're going to, if you're interested in getting the most out of life, having a successful life, then you're in the right place. We're going to look at how you can increase your emotional intelligence to both improve your life and even your speechcraft. So to set the stage, first, let's define what we mean by success. In fact, this is a personal thing, so I'd like to hear from you. What does success mean to you? Anybody, just by raising your hand? Yes, sir.
Accomplishing your goals.
Accomplishing your goals, great.
Actually, for me, success is watching everybody else accomplish their goals.
Everybody else accomplish your goals.
Being persistent and asking questions.
Being persistent in asking questions, excellent. So this is a definition of success for you.
Overcoming obstacles.
Overcoming obstacles. I mean, is there any, what are your personal goals for success? I mean, what are you trying to achieve as success?
I was just going to say never giving up.
Never giving up. Excellent.
Just living a well-rounded life, kind of, I mean, be it career, family life, financial, spiritual life, I mean, having a fulfilling life.
Good. Fulfilling life on all levels. Having enough money, having good relationships, having a meaningful career.
Health.
Health.
Knowing that I had an impact.
Right? That you had an
I helped
impact, right? That your life made a difference.
Getting my life to where I want it.
You brought your life to where you want it. And where is that?
Well, I haven't gotten there yet, but I want to get the career that I want and be able to make a difference in other people's lives.
So making a difference, having a meaningful career.
Yeah.
Right.
To grow and to learn.
Grow.
To keep learning is my goal. Continuous learning.
Excellent. Grow and learn. And there's all sorts of different, one word. Yeah.
Contentment.
Contentment. And that's great, because that really folds into what I'm going to ask you next. And really, it's like, what are these goals actually giving you? So for instance, a common theme is to have enough money, to be, some want lots, some want just enough, but what is that goal, that success actually giving you? So if you get enough money,
Gives you a feeling.
Feeling
of self-worth.
Feeling of self-worth. It might give you a feeling of security. It might give you a feeling of freedom. Let's say you're a positive relationship as success. What is that giving you?
Also security.
Security, maybe a feeling of being loved, or a feeling of being part of a community or connected with others, and a meaningful job. Maybe again a feeling of contribution, a feeling of making a difference. So the point here is that success is not really an action or an achievement, it's actually a feeling. Right? And to prove this, say we can make a lot of money, we can achieve our goal of making X amount of dollars a year. And when you get to that goal, you can feel worried about it, and you can feel greedy, and is that success?
No.
Or you can feel content, secure, free, there. So this may be one of the most important points to really take home today, is really recognizing that success is more of a feeling than it is an accomplishment. So that as you do accomplish things, whether they be grand or small, that you can appreciate those accomplishments more and your life runs smoother. And this is what our work with emotional intelligence helps us to do. Get more in touch with our feelings, which then gives us a greater appreciation for those feelings that we consider success. Does that make sense? All right. So, can we all agree that emotions have kind of taken a back seat in our society? They're not really promoted or even honored that much. How do we get that way? If we look back in history, we can look as recent as, say, the Victorian period, and actually emotions were considered a precursor to hysteria. Right? So it's like, who wants to start to develop the symptoms that are going to lead to mental illness? So it's like, let's leave those things in the closet. We go even further back to the Greek culture, which is what a lot of Western civilization is built upon. Greeks had this notion of stoicism. Have you heard of the Stoics? Basically, they extolled above all else rationality, reason, using the mind and intellect. and felt there was absolutely no place for emotions. This is the fabric that has created this culture. And, you know, I have my own experience basically on how this has affected me and how I've overcome it. Like the Stoics were basically the military class of the Greek culture. And I grew up in a military family. My father was in the army, and he had this attitude, you know, strength was admirable, and weakness was disappointing, and emotions were considered weakness. So we basically ran our family under the banner, big boys don't cry, right? Those words became etched in my consciousness, and like most or many young males of Western society, they became the guiding principle with which I conducted not only the relationship with my father, but all of my relationships. Suppressed, subdued, and emotionless. In fact, I prided myself in becoming the dry-eyed poster child for big boys don't cry. Which is why it was all the more perplexing to me later in life to find myself crying my eyes out in the back of a church bathroom, ironically on Father's Day Sunday. So, just 20 minutes earlier, I was bored to tears by the monotonous minister, and instead my attention was on my post-service plan to be first in line in the church potluck. Well, what the minister would say next would change the way that I felt and experienced my father and my feelings forever. He said, "The relationship with your father is not always easy. It can be very critical and exacting." He changed his tone. He said, "But that doesn't mean he doesn't have a love for you deep down inside. Being that it's Father's Day, I'd like to end my sermon with a poem written by a father to his son who was fighting overseas during World War II." So he's reached in his pocket with a reverent attitude and began to read the poem. "You know, son, it's a funny thing how close a war can really bring a father who for years with pride had kept his emotions deep inside." I found myself strangely connecting with this poem. My father, as I said, was a man of war. He kept his emotions deep inside. I began to imagine, could he write a poem like this? And the minister continued. "I'm sorry, son, when you were small, I let reserve build up that wall. I told you real men never cried, and it was always Mum who dried your tears and smoothed your hurts away so that soon you went back out to play." So already the usher next to me was reaching for the Kleenex. What a cry, baby. But to my dismay, my eyes were getting a little misty as well, which I attributed to the excess pollen that was in it. Then came the next verse. "But son, deep down within my heart, I long to have some little part in drying that small tear-stained face. But we were men, and men don't embrace." Well, at this point, alarm bells were going off in my head. Meep, 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 emotional alert, full feeling meltdown. I was experiencing the torment of these words from both sides of the equation. First, as the child who longed to have this kind of emotional connection with his father. And next, as the father, as my father, as all men who find themselves trapped behind this idea of what it means to be a man by denying the very feelings which make us human. Then the minister concluded the poem. "Well, somehow pride and what is right have changed their places.